In this video, we're going to learn all about using the pen tool. The pen tool in Photoshop is used by most high-end retouchers for a few reasons. You can get really specific with your selections, but you can also save the selections you make and bring them up again to use later on. And I'll show you exactly how to do that right now. So a really useful place that we could start to use the pen tool is on this line on Andrew's arm here. So let's take a look at these layers. We'll turn off the head layers for now. We want to blend this top layer with this bottom layer at the arm here. So let's turn off everything besides the arm and we'll go through and make a selection here. So make sure I have my layer selected and click P to get to the pen tool, or it's right down here. What you're gonna do first is create a path. So the pen tool doesn't work on a pixel by pixel basis like most of the stuff in Photoshop. It's vector based, which means it's basically a series of point and lines with a measurable distance between them, and that's how your selection is made. Don't worry too much about how that all works if you're not already familiar with it. It doesn't matter too much, but it is important to know that you can go back and edit the paths you make with the pen tool really easily. So to do this, we'll first make a point on our path right up here. So I'll just click there, and now we have a point. Now if I click down here, I'll create another point. And I can keep doing that along my path here to create a series of points until I decide to close my path. And when I do that, I'll come close to the first point and the little pen icon will change and that will close my path. Then what I can do is up here, I can choose Make Selection. I can adjust my selection, click OK, and that'll turn into the marching ants, which is selection in Photoshop, right? I'm gonna deselect that because that's not all we have to do, right? That you saw how it was really rigid before. We want to make sure the path is really smooth and exactly follows the curve here of his arm. So if I click, but before letting go, drag out, you see these two little handles here. These allow me to adjust the line on my vector path. And you'll see that if I now make a point here, it's more rounded. So it doesn't come straight off of this point. It comes at a little bit of a rounded point. And now I can go select this. Oops. So if I hold down Alt, I'll get a little pointer here. I can go and select these points. And now I can change this, and you can see how it changes here. So I can bring it closer. You can bring it further away and make a bigger curve like that. So if it's closer, it'll make a smaller curve outward. It's really cool and really useful to know exactly how to use these. So now if I want to like move this point, I can click Control and then click and drag this point around. And now from there, I want to keep going. So I'll scroll down here, make another point down here, drag it out a little bit. And remember, you always want to go towards the inside of your selection. So maybe here I went too far inside. But you want to be a few pixels on the inside of the subject you're masking out because you don't want to get any weird halos. If you zoom really close in here, you don't want any of this weird transition here. You just want the edge to look like it ends on the subject. So I'll go here, hit Control to move that a little bit, and then go to hit Alt to move my anchor point. And you can, if you click Alt, you can move them independently. And so I'll move this one, and basically what you want to do is you make a point on your path, and then you want to point the next anchor point towards the direction of your next point. So this one is going towards down here, so I move that anchor point and point it down here. Then I'll click down here, that's good. Drag out my anchor points from that point, and then let go. And next, let's see, I'll probably want to move that outward a little bit, so I'll just click Control and then click on that point and then drag it outwards. So now with that pointed in the right direction, I'll click down here to continue my path. I'll bring this down a little bit. you can see that I'm just following the curve of the arm. Now, this arm is a really easy example to learn this tool on because it is like a pretty nice curve to follow. It's pretty easy to follow it. So just remember, the things you need to know for this are click to add a new point on your path, drag out to adjust your anchor points, and then if you want to go through and modify an anchor point, hold down Alt until you see the little pointer here. When you drag over your anchor point, adjust that to wherever you're going to next. Or if you want to adjust the point, if you've put it in the wrong spot, hold down Control, move that until it is where you want it, point your anchor point where you're going next, and then click to make your next point. So just keep doing that all along his arm here. Point this anchor point to where I'm going next. Click down here, click down here. I'm just following the outline of his arm here. Okay, now let's do this. Let's cut this out right down here. So I want to bring this selection over, and then I'll bring this anchor point in to make a sharper selection there. And we'll just make this selection go on the inside of here. And this is one of those tools that it really takes a second to get used to using it, but that is totally fine. So the rest doesn't super matter, so we'll just go and cut this out like this. I'll click and make a point here, and then I'll click on my first point to close that selection. And now I have a path. So instead of clicking on Make Selection to just right away go and make a selection out of this path, I am going to click on Paths, and then right here you see this little option that says Work Path. If I double click on this, I can rename and then save my path. So I'll rename this Andrew Arm Left. Click OK. And now that's saved as a path. So now I can keep working down here, do a bunch of stuff, and then if I want to bring up that selection again, I can just go to Paths, double click on that, and there it is, right there. So then I can just click here, Make Selection. So I'll do that now. I'll add a feather of 0.5, anti-alias, click OK, and now I'll go back to my layers, and what I'll do is, because I already have this all feathered out, I'll Control J to make a copy of that layer. Oh, it made a copy of my selection, so I want to delete that. So Control J to make a copy of that layer, and then I'll apply this layer mask. So now this layer is just that cutout, and there's no layer mask on it, so I don't have any other information saved. Then I'll go to Paths, double click here, load that path, go back to Layers, make Selection, OK, and then I can create a path out of that selection. I did the inverse, so I want to Control I that, and now you can see along Andrew's arm we have a super clear line. You can even see it so much more clear than like up here that we'd probably want to go back and adjust that to make it match better. So you can see why professionals use the pen tool most often to make selections. It's so easy to use. Another option, so if I wanted to delete, I'll just delete this whole layer that we just made. Delete layer. So I'll go back to this layer that already has a layer mask on it, go to Paths, load that path, and then go back to my layers. I will click on the layer mask. Then I'll click Make Selection. Keep everything as it is. And what I could do now is I could just paint out this selection with black. And now it'll just add that to my mask here. So I don't have to go out and make a separate thing or duplicate my layer or anything like that. I can just add it to the mask super easily. That looks good. So now Control D to deselect, and now his arm is cut out beautifully. So just to make this match a little better, I'm going to, with the pen tool, go back up here. So I'll just go to the pen tool, start down here where we were, and then make a path along here in his arm just to make it match a little better so it doesn't so suddenly become like a different type of selection. And then I'll go up here, go down here, booyah. Then make selection, okay, and then with my brush, I'm still on that layer mask, so I can still just brush out that, Control D. And now it's a lot smoother of a transition between the two styles of masks that we made. And that is how you can use the pen tool to make and then save different selections within Photoshop.